Hi everyone! So today I bring you part two of talking about health. Now, at the top of the page here, you should see an info card which will take you to part one, which I uploaded last week. And I'll also put a link in the description box below, so you can have a look at that first if you want. It doesn't really matter what order you watch them in, but I would recommend having a look at that one too. But in that episode, I talked about more common health problems, the kind of illnesses most of us will face at some point in our lives. And today, I'm going to talk more about injuries and illnesses that are more serious. Hopefully, you'll never need this vocabulary, but if you do, it could be really useful. In all seriousness, it could be very useful in case of some sort of emergency. And remember, in the UK, in case of a life-threatening injury, the number to call is 999, and also 112 will also connect you to the emergency services. And there is also a non-emergency number in the UK for medical advice for illnesses and minor injury where there is no threat to life. So, of course, it's really important not to bother the emergency services for non-life-threatening conditions, but they do have a non-emergency number. I can't remember what it is, but I'm sure you can Google that and find it no problem. So let's talk about this topic. And I think the first thing that comes to mind, for me at least, is broken bones. Have you ever broken any bones? I haven't, thankfully, but I imagine it's very painful. I obviously know people who have, and it's definitely not something that anyone would want to go through. And in those cases, of course, a visit to the hospital is definitely needed. Now, depending on what has been broken, you'll need some solutions. So you will likely need a plaster or a plaster cast, which keeps a limb, which is a word that we use to describe arms and legs. It keeps a limb still so that it can heal effectively, right? So you'll go and after all your x-rays and all of those things, all the diagnostics, usually they put the broken limb, the broken arm or the broken leg in a plaster cast. And in the case of a broken arm, you might also need a sling, which is a piece of cloth to hold your arm in place. And so if you've ever done a first aid course, you probably learned how to make a sling from a bandage or simply a piece of material. I think you have to, make it with something that you can find at home. From what I remember, it's been a long time since I did a first aid course. Now, if you broke a leg, you could be offered crutches to help you to walk, or you might need a wheelchair for a certain period of time, I suppose. So moving on from the most common broken bones, other injuries that are perhaps more common and are caused by impact might include bruises. Remember, bruises are blue or purple or even black marks, which is why we call it a black eye when people have a bruise around their eye. So they're marks on the skin wherever the impact occurred. Another injury that happens more often is something like a twisted or a sprained joint. I think most of us have sprained an ankle or a knee at some point in our lives. I know I have a few times, usually from wearing poor quality high heels or not looking where I'm going, and then you fall off the curb and you twist your ankle, and it's not very nice. It's very painful. It's very painful and can often lead to some swelling, and so you have to look after that sprain or twisted injury for, I think, a few days, sometimes a few weeks, depending on how bad the sprain is. Anyway, the injuries that we've talked about so far relate more to internal injuries, right? Typically, you can't see what's going on under the skin unless it's an open break where the bone actually breaks through the skin, which is absolutely horrific. But more common superficial injuries like cuts, So depending on the size of the cut, you might only need a plaster. So most of us have plasters at home in a simple, very basic first aid kit. So in those cases, yeah, you probably just need a plaster, or it's called a band-aid, I think, in American English, so a slightly different word. But if it's more serious, you might have to go to either accident and emergency, or the ER, the emergency room, as I think they call it in the United States. So yeah, if it's more serious, you might have to go and have stitches to help the wound heal well. Now, other types of wound can include burns if you touch something too hot, like an oven. And interestingly, if the injury is caused by hot liquid or steam, we call this a scald. And both scald and burn are nouns and verbs, so that makes things a little easier to remember. So I've never had a serious scald or burn, but of course I've burnt myself on the oven a handful of times, and it really hurts. One kind of scary thing that did happen to me once was that I almost passed out. And to pass out is the phrasal verb that we use to mean to faint or to lose consciousness. So I almost fainted. I had just given blood, and so I stupidly hadn't eaten anything beforehand. So I remember walking out of the hall where I had given blood, and there was like a lobby area. So I remember feeling like the room was spinning around me, and obviously one of the nurses, she obviously noticed that I didn't look right, and she must have caught me before I actually became unconscious. I remember being put on one of the beds that they had, and they lifted up my legs, they elevated my legs, and the whole thing probably only lasted a few seconds, and I quickly felt better. They gave me some biscuits and some juice, and I felt better very quickly. But that was a really strange experience. And so the last thing I want to mention, because I think it is important to know in an emergency situation, is do you know what the verb is for when someone has something, usually food, stuck in their throat and they can't breathe? I'll give you a second to think about it. Yeah, it's called to choke. I think this is every parent's worst nightmare, and hopefully you know how to deal with this type of emergency. But I think it is essential to know how to say it and how to react. So I'm sure there are some informative videos on YouTube, and it's very easy to find out how to deal with a choking accident. But I think it is really important to know how to explain what's happening and how to react in those situations. So yeah, I think that's it for today. I hope you've learned some new words. I'm going to put the words that I've mentioned, the key vocabulary, if you like. I'll put the key vocabulary that I've used in the description box below. But remember for you personally to make a note of any word that you didn't know and to keep a record, however you do that. Don't forget to write it in a contextual sentence to help you remember it. And you can actually use the comment section below to practice with your new words as well. That would be great. So if you found this video useful, don't forget to click the like button and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss anything. So take care and bye for now.